So have you ever had a stranger come up to you and ask for help? This happens to me every day, no matter where I go. And I don't have like a Holland Avenue shirt on. I just got the face. Go ask that guy for something. He'll help you. Well, last weekend, I was pulling into a gas station to top off one of the tanks of my father's 1993 Ford F1 pickup. That's right. One of that monster has two tanks, two whole gas tanks. So I pull in the gas station to top off one of the tanks. And as I get in there, it was just rush hour at the gas station. There was not a pump anywhere. I had to drive all the way through to the farthest end and finally found a pump. So I pull the big truck up there, sit down. I haven't even got out of the car. I'm responding to a text. And next thing I know, I look up and there's this face in my window. Sir, can you help me? Okay, so I opened the door. I was like, yeah, how can I help you? She said, can you jump my car battery off? And I said, sure. I said, where's your car at? And she points to where her car was, the farthest pump away from mine. And in a moment, I'm going, why in the world did you just pass all these other people, all these other cars to walk all the way on the other side of the gas station to ask me for help? And about time that I get that out of my I can barely even finish that thought. Kind of like when Harold's here. I can barely finish my thought. And when I get to the end of my thought, all of a sudden she says, I looked out across all of these cars and thought your truck was the only one strong enough for the job. And in that moment, I thought Josie Welsh would be so proud of his truck right now. He would be so excited that his truck was strong enough for the job. He loved that truck. Listen, I've only driven that truck 3 times. He would not let any of us drive his truck. I've only driven it 3 times, and all 3 of those times are since he's gone to be with the Lord. I could not touch it when he was here on the earth. Now, that lady's not the only person that needs help, right? Sometimes we need help, right? Sometimes we need someone to help us. We need someone to jumpstart our battery, the battery of our attitude or our emotions, our spirit, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes we need a boost. Maybe you need a boost today. We're finishing up our series, Christmas Rush, where we have been looking at this one particular moment in history. And it is in this one particular moment in history that this morning, hopefully what we're going to find is what's strong enough to boost you any moment, any time, no matter how many times you break down. There is one thing strong enough for all of the moments of life. And what is that one thing? Well, let's find out. Today we're going to be looking in the Bible at the Gospel of Luke. Our message today is Let's Go Celebrate. And we'll be looking at Luke 2, verse 20. This is what Dr. Luke writes. And the shepherds went back. In the deepest dark of night, some shepherds outside of Jerusalem were suddenly startled when this blinding light came from the sky. And they heard and saw an angel from heaven descend, and the angel began to speak to them with a loud, booming message from the one true God. And what was that message? Luke 2:11. Today, in the city of David, there has been born for you a Savior who is Christ the Lord. A Savior had been born. Not just a Savior, but the Savior. And what did they do? Well, they turned to one another and they said, let's go. Let's go and see and find this baby. Let's go find the Savior. And they did. They went and they searched and they found Joseph and Mary and the baby just as the angel said. And then they saw Jesus, they met Jesus, and again they turned to one another and they said, let's go. Let's go tell someone, anyone, about what we have seen and what we have heard. And they did. They went out and they began to tell people about what had happened to them, their experience. And people were amazed, and my guess is a little bit perplexed. You can see some of them looking around going, who are these guys? Are they shepherds? Can they even read and write? How do they know these things? Why is it that I'm listening to anything they're saying? Why are they so excited? Why am I hanging on every word of their story? After telling people about what they had seen and heard, the shepherds again turned to one another and they said, let's go. And what did they do this time? Well, they got booked on some morning talk shows to tell everybody about their experience. That's what happened, right? No. They had an appearance on a late night show with Fallon or Kimmel or Colbert or on the Thick of Night, just to tell their late night story of what happened with them. Or maybe they signed a book deal or made a post on TikTok. Maybe they said, hey, you know what? We should start a church. Let's start the Shepherds of Bethlehem, Presbyterian, Reformed, Free Will, Independent, Baptist, Holiness, Methodist Church out on State Road 23 off the frontage road. Let's do that. Let's just start a church. No, they didn't do any of those things. They turned to one another and they said, let's go back to work. That sounds crazy, right? I mean, none of us are thinking that when we have the Christmas holidays, right? Hey, let's go back to work. Doesn't sound very exciting. That doesn't sound like something that you would be excited about going back to work. In the words of Harry Lime, that sounds like getting scammed by a kindergartner. You know, this doesn't sound good. This sounds like a terrible thing. But that's what they did. They went back to work. They went back to the fields. They went back to their sheep. Somebody once said, those shepherds went back to their sheep, never to be heard from again, and yet never to be forgotten. Why? Why are they not forgotten? Why are we still talking about those shepherds? Well, because their lives were changed. Their jobs may not have changed, but their lives were changed. And the way their lives were changed got to us. One of the reasons that we engage with the Lighting Moon Christmas offering, one of the reasons that we're part of something called the cooperative program, and we give to all these different mission agencies, one of the reasons that we are right now, our church is supporting 2 missionaries that we can't even know, we can't even see, we can barely message with, is because they're in closed, dangerous countries. But we're supporting them. One of the reasons we're connected with all of these things is because we want to remember that the gospel came to us. I did not deserve to hear about Jesus. You did not deserve to hear about Jesus. It's not part of a right that you have in life. It's not part of being an American. It is stunning that the gospel made it to South Carolina. It is stunning that the gospel made it out of that field with those shepherds. But it did. And that's why we remember, and that's why we're still talking about them, because they made sure the gospel didn't stay there. They made sure the gospel came to us. The lives of those shepherds were changed. Has this story changed you? Has the good news of the message of the gospel, the message of the birth of Jesus, the baby in the manger, has it changed you? Are you overwhelmed, stunned, and amazed with the incarnation? What's the incarnation? What's a fancy shun word that comes from a shining, famous name? And that name is Emmanuel, God with us. The baby that those shepherds saw is the only baby that, not just by name, but by nature and character, is the only one who can truly be called Emmanuel. That baby is the only baby who was and is truly God and truly man. J.I. Packer said this: in other words, all the qualities and powers that are in us, as well as all the qualities and powers that are in God, were, are, and ever will be, really and distinguishably present in the one person of the man from Galilee. Jesus Christ is truly God and truly man. There is no one else like him. That's why the shepherds' lives were changed. It wasn't just a baby. It was what? What was the message of the angel? There has been born for you a Savior. They didn't just go see a baby. They went to see the Savior, and their lives were changed. Have you met that Savior? Not do you know the Christmas story, but have you encountered Jesus the Christ? Like personally, have you engaged with this child? Have you engaged with this Savior? Beyond a story, is it the song of your heart? Have you found salvation in Jesus? C.S. Lewis said this, in the Christian story, God descends to reascend. He comes down from the heights of absolute being into time and space, down into humanity. But he goes down to come up again and bring the whole ruined world up with him. And he says this, one has the picture of a strong man stooping lower and lower to get himself underneath some great complicated burden. He must stoop in order to lift. He must almost disappear under the load before he incredibly straightens his back and marches off with the whole mass swaying on his shoulders. Jesus Christ stooped from heaven to a manger. And in a sense, he disappeared from the manger. He didn't stay in the manger. He grew to be a man, and that man was carried out on a cross outside of Jerusalem. He was crucified. In a sense, on the cross, he disappeared under the load of the ruin of every generation. And he strategically, on that cross, died to satisfy the penalty of sin, my sin and your sin. And when the penalty of sin had been satisfied, the dead body of Jesus was placed in a tomb. But he disappeared from the tomb, not like a magic trick. He disappeared because he rose from the grave. And he is alive. And he straightened his back. And he reascended into heaven. And one day he will return and he will lift up all those who are believing in him. And according to the words of C.S. Lewis, he will march off with the whole mass of eternity swaying on his shoulders. That's why the shepherds were changed. It's not just a cute Christmas story. It is the salvation of the world that we speak of. Have you met that Savior? Have you encountered Jesus the Christ? Has your very own soul been lifted up out of fear and ruin? Is your ultimate confidence in the Christmas spirit? Or is your ultimate confidence in the one who will march away with the whole mass of eternity swaying on his shoulders? The confidence of those shepherds, it changed that night. Their ultimate confidence was no longer in those sheep and making money from their career. Their ultimate confidence became focused, infatuated, passionately stirred toward God. How do we know that? Listen to what Luke writes next. And the shepherds went back, glorifying and praising God for all that they had heard and seen. Once again, those smelly, scraggly shepherds, they turned to one another and they said, let's go. Let's go celebrate all that we've seen and all that we've heard. They were glorifying, they were praising, they were magnifying, they were rejoicing, they were celebrating the goodness and the greatness and the grandness of the glory of God. They were changed. Let me ask you a question. Do you know how to celebrate as a Christian? Do you know how to celebrate? Is there a smile that comes on your face when you think of what it means to be saved, what it means to have your soul lifted from fear and ruin? Have you truly celebrated what it means to be saved? I mean, even just one time. Can you remember a moment where you celebrated what it means to be saved? But the joy would be, can you remember a lot of moments? You know, sometimes celebrating our salvation might mean raising our hands and singing a song in a church service, or it might mean sitting still in quiet reflection. Over the last 40 years, I've been in a lot of different moments of worship, sometimes with majestic traditional hymns, sometimes with hard rock and praise songs, and I have celebrated the glory of God and my salvation in Him in all of those settings. But there's also been a few times that I've stopped at a stop sign on a country road in Bertie County in eastern North Carolina or somewhere outside of Abbeville, and I stopped in the middle of nowhere on a country road, and I wept that I have been rescued and redeemed and saved and satisfied. That the story of my life has changed. I wasn't just a good American Southern kid who grew up in church, lost, damned, dead without Christ, no matter how many times I went to church. But God in His grace quickened my heart, stirred me, called me to salvation, rescued me. I was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. And I have learned what it means to celebrate in my salvation. And 10,000 years from now, when I am long gone from life on this earth, when I am many, many thousands of years from my last Christmas, I will still be celebrating. I will still be glorifying and praising God, and it will never get old. The shepherds knew that. The shepherds found that. They didn't just go back to work and school like we do after the holidays, right? They didn't go back going, back to the grind. No, they didn't lollygag too long into Christmas. They said, man, this is great, but it's time to go back to work. And they went back to work, what? Celebrating. They went back to work celebrating what happened. In the Bible, these words for glorifying and praising, they have a tense of continual action. It's the verbiage, meaning that this wasn't like a one-time Christmas Eve service worship thing for the shepherds. This was continual. They started celebrating, they started glorifying, they started praising, and they didn't stop. It became who they were. It'd be 30 years before those shepherds heard anything else about that baby. I mean, think about it. I mean, the chances of them hearing anything about Jesus, it'd be another 3 decades. By then, it's very likely some of those shepherds had already died. But at the very least, they were 30 years older than they were before. 30 years had passed since that night. And when you look at this one moment, when you look at what they experienced, for me at least, it is really hard to think that they grew up to be old men sitting out in the fields telling dirty jokes and talking about their favorite sports teams. When I look at what they experienced, it's difficult for me to think they grew up to just be senior citizens that sat around just complaining about the government and complaining about the economy, complaining about the church, complaining about everything and anything, complaining about their team losing or complaining about losing their favorite Christmas tradition. It seems that when we look at these shepherds and we look at this moment in their life, they were never the same. And what they became passionate about was glorifying God, being stunned and amazed with God. What are we passionate about? Are we passionate about glorifying, praising God, being stunned that we've been rescued? Luke wrote this entire letter based on eyewitness accounts. And someone said, you can just see him running down one of these shepherds, right? Just finally finds one of them. Hey, can I ask you just a few questions? Just a quick interview. Sure. Do you remember anything about that night? And you can just see that old shepherd saying, man, I remember it like it happened 5 minutes ago. Can you remember some of the things surrounding the moment when you were saved? Do they still feel fresh? I think part of the reason my salvation feels fresh is I was so stinking arrogant. I was so arrogant. I thought I was a Christian. My dad was a deacon. My mom was a Sunday school teacher. I'd been in church since I was a kid. I thought I was a Christian. I thought I was a great kid. Everybody liked me. I was fun. I was funny. I was always the one picked to do the crazy things at church. Yeah, man. Yeah. I was arrogant, thinking I was saved. And God broke me as a 6th grader. He showed me that I was lost. And I think the reason I can remember walking down that little dirt road, which is paved now outside the Garden City Chapel in Myrtle, down there in Myrtle Beach, I think the reason it's so fresh in my mind is I remember being broken. So it feels like 5 minutes ago because I was so arrogant and then I was so rescued. You may not have those strategic memories, but it has to be more than shaking the preacher's hand and getting baptized. It has to. It can't just be the outer workings. These shepherds were changed from the inside out. And this time of year, it's a beautiful moment for us to be overwhelmed and stunned at what happens in our lives, just like the shepherds. More than likely, those shepherds grew to be old men who loved and celebrated Jesus. But at the very least, in this moment in history, it was back to work. But they were back to work. Their spectacular night and their experience was over. That could be a very important Christmas message for all of us. See, this is the time of year we love the special things, right? We love the special services and the special programs and the special gifts and the special music and the special food and all the special. And that's fine. All the special things can be good and healthy and happy and helpful and holly and jolly. That's great. But the most special reality in the universe was a message that came in the sky, out in a field, in the middle of the night, near Bethlehem, that a Savior had been born. Some smelly, scraggly shepherds not only discovered and heard that message, not only went and found the baby, not only went and told other people about it, but they began to celebrate those things not by disappearing, but by going back to work. See, when we have to go back to the normal things in life, more often than not, we see them as drudgery. But in this moment, we see the shepherds kind of sending us a message. Hey, when Christmas is over, and when Christmas is not over, keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep it simple. Keep serving Jesus wherever you are, whatever day it may be. Keep celebrating Jesus wherever you are and whatever day it may be. The Apostle Paul was writing to some folks in the ancient city of Corinth, and he said this, I am afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve by his trickery, your minds will be led astray from sincere and pure devotion to Christ. Simple, sincere, pure devotion to Christ. God did not meet the shepherds in a sanctuary. God did not meet the shepherds at a special Christmas Eve service. There's nothing wrong with either one of those things. But God met them at work. God met these unreligious men at work. And when their exciting night was over, they went back to work. But work would never be the same. The vibe in the field was going to change forever. Ray Pritchard said this: they still had to deal with cranky sheep, and sometimes they had to step in sheep manure, but that hardly mattered now. They had seen the Christ child. They had seen Jesus, and everything changed. They left celebrating. They went back to work celebrating. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't go to Juilliard and get a music degree. They didn't know what they were singing and celebrating about. They had no idea. They just said, man, we have met Jesus, and we need to do something with this. Isn't that all worship really is? It's us just responding, praising, glorifying, doing that which should be natural because of what we've discovered about Jesus. Those shepherds were glorifying Jesus. The word glory and glorifying, it means to value something. They were putting great value on a baby that they saw in a manger. What kind of value are you putting on the baby in the manger? What kind of value do you give to Jesus? The baby in the manger is God's solution to the problems of your life. He is strong enough for your problems. The baby in the manger is God's answer for the purpose of your life. He is strong enough for your purpose. And the baby in the manger is God's answer to the sin in your life. He is strong enough for your sin. Stories told of a Christmas play at a school. And part of what they designed in the play was that they hid a light in the manger where Jesus was. And the plan was that when this one moment came in the play, that all the lights would be turned off except for the light hidden in the manger. And then the glow would be all about Jesus. Well, the little boy who was in charge of doing the lights got a little confused, and he turned all the lights off at that moment. And you could hear one of the shepherds in that stage whisper, hey, you switched off Jesus. No matter how joyful and wonderful your Christmas is, or how jaded and worrisome your Christmas is, don't switch off Jesus. It's so easy to do. I wish it was harder, but it's just not. It's easy for us to switch Jesus off. Don't do it. For the good of your own soul. If you want to do something selfish for yourself this Christmas, don't switch off Jesus. See, Jesus is more than a boost. He's more than just a boost. The strength of Jesus is more than just a Christmas boost, a holiday boost, a New Year's boost, a Sunday boost. The strength of Jesus, the way that we say he is strong enough, is that by his very nature and his character, one day he will march off with the whole mass of eternity swaying on his shoulders. This is who Jesus is. So, let's be a little more like the shepherds. Let's learn to turn to one another and say, let's go. Let's go celebrate all that we have seen and heard. Why? Because Jesus Christ was born to save.